All right, we're going to continue with working with rational expressions. We're still not solving any equations or anything. We're just going to simplify things. In today's lesson, we're going to add and subtract. So today's lesson is adding and subtracting rational expressions. Let's go take a peek at one. All right, so as you can see here, we have a fraction, we have a fraction, we have a plus sign in the middle. We're going to add these together. If you go back to elementary school, when you just had to add two fractions that didn't have variables in them, you need a common denominator. So actually, let me remind you of that. Let's just go over to the side. Before we do this problem, let me just remind you that if you had a problem like, say, 2/3 plus 1/4, something like that, you cannot combine those two fractions until these denominators match. And so the key is figure out what's the smallest number you can put down here that would be the same number that you could turn the 3 and the 4 into that number. Or another way to say that is what's the smallest number that 3 and 4 both divide into evenly. Of course, that number is 12. So we would make the common denominator on a problem like this 12. And then, we can't just go around changing 3's to 12's and changing 4's to 12's. We have to think to ourselves, what did we do, what did we multiply by to make this 3 into a 12, which is 4. So we have to multiply the numerator by 4. And so you have 8/12. And then over on the other side, we had to multiply by a 3 to get 12. So we multiply the numerator by 3, and we have that. Once we have the two fractions with the same denominator, then all we're really doing is saying to ourselves, 8/12 plus 3/12 is 11/12. All right, that should take you back to several years ago and a lot since then too. Now, so that's just a little separate problem. Let's go back to what we're doing today. We're adding two fractions, same thing, only now we see some m's and some n's in there, but not too much different. All right, question number 1. We look at these two denominators. If we're going to add these fractions together, these must match. And we look at them and we say to ourselves, what's the smallest amount of algebra stuff, the smallest algebra expression we can come up with that I could convert both of these things into? And some of you at first glance, you might say 12, you see 6 and 2, but really we don't even need to go to 12. We can just go to 6. We can make the denominator 6 here. Let's start making our fraction. There it is, and get it all set up. So we can make these two numbers both be 6 by just multiplying this one by a 3. But we also have this n sitting here. And it's not going away from this fraction over here. So we're going to need to have this fraction down here also have the n so that everything matches. So the common denominator for this problem is 6n. I can easily make both of those denominators turn into 6n. The first one needs an n. So I'm going to multiply by n. That's how I'm going to create 6n there. So I have to multiply the top by n. And we get 3mn. I'm going to write it nicer than that. See, 3mn. Instead of writing n3m, I'm going to write 3mn. And then over on the other side, we had a 2n. We had to turn it into 6n. So we already had the n. We don't need anything there. But we did change this 2 to a 6. So we need to multiply by 3. So times 3 up here times 3 here. And we get 15. Just a 15. This is 15 right here, so I wrote 15 right there. And the whole reason we did that is now we can add these two fractions together. They have the same denominator. So it's going to be 3mn over 6n plus 15 over 6n equals 3mn plus 15 all over 6n. let me write that. 3, you take the numerators and add them together, and you put it all over one denominator that was the common denominator. That's the answer to that problem. Let's talk about it for a second, make sure we understand what the point of this was. The beginning of this problem had a fraction plus a fraction. This might not look that pretty, and it really doesn't, but it's one fraction. That's the goal. We took two fractions, we added them together to make one fraction. A little cleaner over on the other side here with the basic number fractions, just from 5th, 6th grade, but you know, where you actually feel like you got an answer to the problem. Here, your answer to the problem is that you have one fraction. All right, let's do it again. Not much difference here. I just put a subtraction sign in the middle because the lesson is add and subtract. Not really going to change a whole lot though. Let's go a little faster. We have a 3y and we have a 4. We're trying to figure out what we could make the two denominators be so that they're the same, and that we can easily turn each of these things into that same denominator. And we have a 3 and a 4. Common denominator 3 and 4 is 12, so we're definitely going to have 12s down here. And then we have this, we're going to need a y in both of them, so, you know, because they have to match. So we already have a y here, so nothing to do there. But we're going to need a common denominator of y over here too, so they're the same. Now we think about what did I do to create this 12y in each of those fractions. So for the first one, I multiplied by 4, so I have to multiply the numerator by 4. And the second one, we needed a 3y. And so I had to multiply the numerator by 3y. Notice that this is now 12y right here, and this is also 12y. So whatever I did to make this be 12y, I need to do the numerator, and the same thing over here. So over here the numerator is 16. Over here the numerator is 15xy. 15, so I times 3, x times y. 15xy. Alright, now that these match, we have the same denominator. Now we combine them to make one fraction. All we're doing is writing 16 minus 15xy all over the common denominator of 12y. That's it. These are just simplifying problems. We're not solving any equations. We're just trying we have one goal in mind. I'll say it again. We had a fraction minus a fraction. We now have one big fraction. One more. Not different, but you know, a little more stuff going on. We got a few more variables. We got some powers of the variables. So let's do it. Let's first just set it up like I've been doing here. I'm going to make the two fractions. And the first thing we need to do is we need to look at these denominators. Look at that denominator, look at that denominator. Start with the numbers, 2 and 5. Smallest number that goes into, that 2 and 5 both go into evenly is 10. So let's just get that out of the way. We know we're going to need a 10 as our number part of the common denominator. Our variable part, it's actually, you know, it's pretty simple. You need the most amount of each variable. So if there's one x here and there's 2 here, you're going to need both. If you just think about that, you'll understand why. I mean, if I tried to make the common denominator just x down here, well, this is already higher than that, so it won't match up. So we need to have x squared as our part of our common denominator for the x's, and then we're also going to need, just like the x's, we're going to need y squared. By making this the common denominator, it's allowing me to be able to turn this into this, and this can get turned into this. And now the next thing I do is think about what it takes to convert. I needed a 5 to make 10. And you can see I need x squared, and I only have 1 here right now, so I'm going to need an x. And that's it. This thing times this thing equals this thing. So whatever I do to the denominator, I'm going to have to do to the numerator. So we'll cover that in a second. And then over on the other fraction, same thing. You have a look at this. You have a 5. You need 10. So you're going to need to multiply by 2. And then if you look at the x squared, we already have x squared, so we don't need any more multiplying by any x's. But we need y squared, and we only have a y here. So we're going to need to put another y right there. So that we're going to multiply the numerator by 2y. So now, over here we have 15x squared. And over here we're going to have 8y squared. All I did there is multiply this times this to make this, and I multiplied this times this to make this. And that was the hard part. The easy part now is just writing it all together as one fraction. You take the numerator of one plus the numerator of the other one, all over one big common denominator of 10x squared y squared. That's it. That's adding and subtracting. Well, it's it for now. I took this lesson and I broke it into 2 parts. So that we're going to call this part A. So your homework will say 4.3a. Just to give you a little preview for what's coming up, pretty much the same thing. We're going to add and subtract fractions, but then we're going to have problems in here and all this stuff that factors. So we're going to see some trinomials and stuff. We'll have to factor them and try to get common denominators. It's a little trickier. This should be hopefully pretty simple for you. So I hope this helps. Good luck on the homework. Work hard. Be nice. See you soon.